reports. Most of us, if you work in the nonprofit sector, have to do them at least once a year. It can be as small as just presenting your financial data, or it can be as involved a process as some digital storytelling with video and with a website and something mobile friendly. So there is a fair bit of range there. Depending on your nonprofit or your organization, you might have different audiences. Eli already alluded to donors as being a key audience. People love seeing their names at the donor list at the back of the report. Your funders might be another big audience. If you're a membership organization, it might be your members. So you might be trying to demonstrate that value that you're giving year after year. If you're a public-facing organization, maybe it's the media, maybe it's a government department. So thinking about those audiences would be really helpful in determining which stories you're going to need to be able to tell. So I took a look at my desk this morning, and when you come to a new job, there's always that folder of things that somebody left you. And so this is the folder of annual reports that somebody left behind. So I took a little photo of that today. So I work for an organization called the Real Estate Foundation of BC. We're a grant maker. We fund environmental research, education, and policy and law reform. And we've definitely come a very long way in our annual reports. And we've still got quite a bit to go. So we've got a whole bunch of terrific speakers tonight. You've already met me. I'm doing a little intro, which I just finished now. We've got up next Maya Pankala from the Spinal Cord Injury BC. Who's going to be talking about the planning cycle. We've got Chad Lehman talking about sourcing content. How do you populate your annual report with really great stories? Eli is going to do a very quick demo of designing on the quick with Adobe Spark. We've got Andrea here, who's going to be speaking about presenting financial data, and Dean, who's going to be talking about financial statements. So we've got a pretty round mix. Jillian was unable to come tonight, but she was going to be presenting on web-based annual reports. Great, so I'm going to turn it over to Maya. Great. Yay!
Yay! So friends in the back, let us know if the sound isn't carrying. We do have a mic option. Some people love mics, some people hate them, but we'll use them if you insist. So definitely let us know.
Can you guys hear me? I'd love to not use the mic, so, okay. My name is Maya. I work with Spinal Cord Injury BC. So we're a local nonprofit. We have offices around the province, and what we do is we help people with spinal cord injuries and related disabilities adjust and adapt and thrive after their injuries. So we're a support network, whether you're getting back to real living and people to show you how to do that, or just information about every part of your injury and how to live with that. And every year we put out an annual report, as organizations do. And we've actually started putting out one that is print and one that's online. That's a totally different website from the print version. So I'll just give you guys a quick look at what that looks like. So our print one this year, we celebrated 60 years. And what we've been doing for that is we had a designer do a template for us a few years ago. And since then we've just used that template and modified it. So sadly for the designer, saving costs on design, but enabling us to kind of insert the information that we wanted for that next year. I'll just quickly scroll through that, and it's online, so you guys can have a look later if you want. So I guess one of the things that makes our annual reports unique is that we don't have a huge long message from, as Chad and I were talking about, our board or our executive director. We do have a little blurb here, but it's usually something that's pretty fun, light, and speaks to the theme of the annual report. So basically, yeah, that's what that looks like. We try to make it really photo heavy. We use a lot of quotes. One of the things we don't always do, but should be doing, is captioning our photos, because it's a waste of a photo to not be able to say what that moment is, and that means you're not having to actually tell an entire story. You can just say when that photo was taken, and you're succeeding in that. And then at the very back, we have some great stories before that, some stats, and at the very back we have our financial statements and our thank yous, along with some highlights, side by side, so you can see what we're thankful for. So that's what that looks like. This year, I didn't actually do the web annual report, which tells you about the grief of building annual reports. But I did one last year that I loved, so I'll give you guys just a quick sample of what that was like. Last year, our theme was Little Things, Big Impact. So the challenge was to lay it out in a way that was still digestible for people that were looking for the old structure, and also a fun way for people that were looking to kind of be interactive with the new website. So up here, you can click right through to the things that you're looking for. So if you want the financials or the facts and figures, they're right up there, and that'll just take you down to where the financials are on this infinite scrolling page. But the rest of it is kind of a story that we were hoping people that look at this want to go through from beginning to end. So what we did, we went with a "We've got you covered from A to Z" theme. And then we just kind of picked a detail for every letter. So that's our motto: adjust, adapt, and thrive. I'll just scroll through this a little bit. Here we have belonging and a video that speaks to what it means to belong in a community. Coffee and connections, throwing in some stats there, but kind of weaving them in a more natural and organic way so you don't feel like you're looking at data. Oh, data. So you are looking at data, and that brings up this map. All kinds of things like this. I'll just go down to one of my favorite letters, which is, so actually this one's a good one. I think often we're so focused on telling the stories of our members that we don't realize that we can be telling the stories of our staff members as well. And I think that's one of the ways that you can really show your donors and your supporters that you're part of the work, when you can share those stories of what staff are doing. So Heather is our info line specialist, and we featured her in our annual report because then people feel like they can get to know you, get to know the work that you're doing firsthand. And then moving right along to my favorite part. Oh, numbers, no. This one. So some of the letters we had to get creative on. We had nothing that happened with an O. But we kind of wanted to capture this attitude that we have going on, which is getting people back to doing the things they never thought would be possible. So our O was, "Oh, I could never do that." And then we just pulled quotes from what people had said to us throughout the year. So, "Oh, I could never feel beautiful again," or "hit the waves with my daughter," or "race 5K," "bring my mom to an event." So yes, I'll give you guys the link to this if you want to look through it. I'm super proud of it and love it, and I feel like you should look at it from A to Z. The Y is a little shout out to you, so you'll want to get all the way down there. And now for the actual presentation. Am I at like 2 minutes left?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Actually, while I'm still here. So we have organizations throughout Canada, and we partner with them on some things. And to give you an example of another annual report and of a theme that was done very literally, which I do not recommend, we have Spinal Cord Injury Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. So they do a great job of putting their reports online as well. But I think what you want to avoid is to use a theme that's very, very literal. So theirs is the harvest, which means you're seeing apples and apple bullet points and going out on a limb and pie charts that are literal apple pie charts. So it's cute, but it doesn't evoke what we do. It looks like it might be for a farming organization or something like that. This year's was construction and Lego based. So again, I think your theme needs to come from the actual programming that you do and not from something that's outside of that. Okay. Planning your report. So the first thing we plan, sort of, is the theme. These top things are themes that we've done for the last 4 years, just to give you an idea of the kind of themes that we do. So 60 years, that was a natural fit since it happens only once. Little Things, Big Impact was the one before. Reaching out, community. Basically, our themes are usually centered around the people that we serve. So I think there's two ways to go about picking a theme. Either you keep your eyes open for themes that emerge throughout the year, Or if you know that you need to cover something like our 60-year anniversary, you set it at the beginning of the year and you look for stories that fit into that theme. And I think you can pretty much twist any story to fit into the theme that you're looking for. So there's lots of, I think, hopefully I'm not infringing on what you're talking about, but there's lots of places to dig for those stories. So member stories is an obvious one, but I think interesting donations, for example, is kind of a good little detail to keep in mind. So we got our first Bitcoin donation this year. Last year we had a van donation, which was a great story for us because it spoke to a longtime member that we had who was able to pass on his accessible vehicle to another person. Staff successes or interesting initiatives that maybe other nonprofits aren't doing are great stories. And once you've set that out, kind of what you're looking for, and towards the end of your process, you want to make sure that your tone and your voice is consistent. So that's not just your writing. It is your writing, but it's not just that. So you're looking at design. So pick a few key colors, keep your font the same throughout, and keep your visual style the same. So if your photos are light and bright, try to keep that kind of photo from beginning to end, and that'll just help tie your theme together. And then I love to bring up my theme at the very end. So if it's together, I'll bring it up in the beginning, but then I'll weave it throughout that word, keeping it in mind throughout. Okay, so when you're planning, I think the question I ask myself is, how do I want people to see our organization and the work that we're doing? And you come up with a few key ideas, or I do, about what we want to be seen as. So we want to be seen as having an impact that's super wide-reaching. How are we going to accomplish that in our annual report? Well, it's by using photos that are from around the province so that all of our members can recognize their communities in our photos. It's by being super diverse in the people that we're featuring, and we absolutely get called out on that when we're not. It is by looking at the broader impact. We also like to be seen as forward-thinking because we want people to support our initiative as a nonprofit that knows, that's tuned in, and that's like moving ahead with big ideas. So that's kind of where design comes in, a tone that's fun and fresh, and then just showing new activities that you maybe haven't seen before. So we're not just doing coffee groups, we're doing paddle boarding with like a wheelchair on a paddle board, and we're doing cool things like that that capture the imagination and stick with you in the long run. And then, of course, we want to be approachable and relatable, so there's tone and all that. What's up there? And we want to display our unique connection. So this is why you should give to us, because we are uniquely positioned to help this group of people. And that is just being really candid. You know, it's sharing those quotes that are super heartfelt and that you have received that you can then pass on to your audience. And just being honest about staff contributions, people's experiences, of course, with their permission, and interesting partnerships around the province. So these are just some ideas, but of course your goals might be different in your annual report and what you want your organization to be seen as. Target audience. Donors, members, and sponsors and funders are our key target audiences. I've put little hearts and money and ideas above their heads because I think that they all get the same things from the report, but in different ways. So, for example, if a donor sees a beautiful report, they feel great about it. It's like heartwarming to them. This is great work that they've done. We're not asking them for money. We're reporting back on the work that we've been able to achieve with their money. And that makes them want to give money, and maybe also gives them some ideas. With members, it's more like it gives them ideas of the cool things that are happening around the province and warms their hearts to the organization. And with sponsors and funders, it might give them a new idea on how they can partner with us in a different way or how they can donate in a different way. And then, of course, we have our secondary audiences. So our staff regularly consult our reports just for stats, for stories. We send them around to interns and volunteers if we want to entice them to come work with us, and our board members also feel special when they get to see the cool work we're doing. So 3 formats that we deal with at our organization. The print format is just this. It's a booklet that's in print. The PDF is this, but PDF'd, like I showed you here. And the online one is that other website. That's a totally different experience, but has the same information woven in throughout it. And they all have slightly different audiences and uses. So, and then of course we advertise our annual report because we're proud of it and it has a lot of great information. So This is a postcard that we sent out, or that we gave out actually at our AGM. So that's the front. The back was like a summary of our annual report in a postcard. So these were the interesting stats, kind of like we pulled something from everything and threw it in here. And then of course that was very shareable on social media, and people wanted to pass it along to their friends. We had it at our offices. The process. So I'll look at print versus online. The print process, I think if you're timing it, you have to start backwards because everything takes its certain amount of time. So mailing it out takes time, getting it printed takes time. And of course there's always like rush orders, which I regularly put in, but it's a panic and you don't want to get to that stage. Proofing, design. So some of these things I've actually put in navy blue, which is the things that you may or may not control yourself. So if you're hiring out for a designer, you need to allot for that extra time to get the design in, to get the edits back, and if you have an X amount of edits, you're going to want time for that. Stats and names. In our organizations, it's like hounding people for statistics that we need to put in. The donor list too is like so many different emails getting the donor list together. So that's a lot of time as well, and you need to get started on that early. And then the stuff that's within your control if you're making the report is probably more the stories, the photos, things that you can gather yourself. If you're doing it online in a separate website, it all kind of becomes a giant swirl. So it's all the same content. You can reorganize it in any way you like. You can leave it to the last minute and stress about it profusely before the annual general meeting. And in the end it comes out and it's published and you can change anything you want. It's super forgiving. So that is, that's one of the things I love about the online version is that you can absolutely make mistakes. Same thing actually with a PDF. If you make mistakes, you can re-PDF that annual report that hasn't been sent out to people. And yeah, like you don't need to put everything in your report the first time it goes live for the online one. You can keep adding and building throughout. You want like most of it there probably if you're presenting it, but. And some of the benefits. So print, it's expected, as in that's a good thing. Organizations, for the most part, are expected to have some kind of version of a print annual report. It's a good physical leave behind if you're going to meet sponsors, potential sponsors, or families, anything like that. Good visual stories. It forces you to get it down to your key content, your best content, which is great. Like you have to edit, and only the best stuff goes into your current one. And it's a sure way to reach those donors that don't have email. It still goes into their mailbox, which means that you're reaching an entire donor, like for us, an entire section of donors that we wouldn't otherwise reach. Online, it's unexpected, which is also a good thing. It kind of shows that you're innovative, you're forward thinking, and you're doing big things and making big changes in the community. It's interactive. So our online report has a video in it. It has links linking through to other things. So for example, that might be a story about someone and how she enjoyed an event, and that will link through to photos of that event. Or we'll have maps where it's like, click here to see where we're located around the province, and it brings up points. It allows you to put extra content, it's emailable, and it's totally adjustable afterwards. So, in summary, I think the big thing about planning your report is that you do want to focus on the details, but what you want to get from it is that feeling of that people were there for the ride with you, or if they weren't, that they should have been. This quote I always pull up, and I laugh when people do, but it is really applicable to a lot of the work we do, which is that people are going to forget the things you said and did, but they won't forget how you make them feel. So that's the general idea, is to give them a feeling through your report. So for us, it's not an ask for money, it's more of a thank you, and here's the great work that we all did together. Make every element work for you. So like I said, caption your images and use quotes to tell your stories. That saves you the grief of having to write them from scratch. They're already done for you. Look outside the nonprofit world for inspiration, because as we know, people with profits are way ahead of us, and there's a lot of great things happening there, and there's no reason those things shouldn't be happening in the nonprofit world. And there's a variety of free tools that you can use and that I use. So for my online annual reports, I love just the infinite scroll, because it's one page, it's simple, it goes through, and you don't have to build out an entire website. So you're not having to make menus with drop downs and things like that. If you guys don't use the Noun project for your, I'm absolutely in love with the Noun project, and I was feeling like, should I reveal this secret trick to a room full of people? Because it makes me look like a designer. But the Noun project, you know what? Can I demonstrate it?
You should do this.
Okay. So, but I'll just, I'll say the last thing too. There's a bunch of free stock photo websites. So one of the things that I think make our annual reports work really well is that we don't use stock photos, but if you need to use those stock photos, both of those have beautiful free stock shots, and you don't even need to credit the photographers. That said, it's nice if you do. And the Noun project is the most magical place on the internet. So what it is, it's designers have submitted anything and everything. So what do you guys want me to search?
Pickles.
Great. There's so many pickles. Literally like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So how this works is you can buy it and not have to quote cite who made it. I think it costs like $2 to buy one. Or you can put a citation somewhere small in your project. They come, you download them in PNG format, and yeah, you make them work for you. So anytime you need an icon, this has everything. You can also combine them, you know, you have a man eating pickles or whatever, man in a wheelchair eating pickle. Yeah, I think like this is my favorite place, like I said, on the internet. My one word of caution is that when you're picking, because there's so much to choose from, choose things that look good together. So of the same style. So basically similar line thickness, like look like they were drawn maybe by the same artist. Yeah, and that is the end of my presentation.
Questions. Do you want to do questions at the end and do kind of panel style, or do you want to do one at a time questions? Save them all for the end? Sure. Let's do that. Burning questions. Yes, burning.
Where's the Chad stuff in here?
The file name is like 2018-02. Yeah,
it has your name in it. So easy.
Hey everybody, I had the pleasure of going after Maya and all her beautiful work, which I've shown to my co-workers, like, it doesn't have to be a 24 PDF of text. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how I hate reporting. It's like my least favorite thing to do, and how I've kind of hacked to work around that. So it's got a little prop here. So a couple of years ago, I convinced Google to give me a bunch of money to make this. And it's essentially a mouse that uses your mouth. So it's meant for people like quadriplegic or ALS. Except when I asked Google for this money to do it, I never thought they'd give me the money. And then when they did, I had no idea what I was doing. And then I had to report to them about what I was doing. So by the time I actually got the money and had something like this that worked, it took me a good year and a half. But because like I got this Google money and a lot of attention, it's like, what the hell am I going to report on? Because I have nothing to give anybody. I had all this interest and stuff. So I'm like, I'll write a newsletter. That's nice and easy. So we made this pretty rigorous. And you can go to our website, and that's like super small. I think someone's going to show me how to better visualize data sooner rather than later. But it wasn't huge at first. Like I think, I kind of started with the people that I met, put them on there, and slowly grew it over time. But what we did was we got really rigorous about like, what did we do this week on it? Where were we on our work in progress? And like one was like, I hired smarter young engineer people fresh out of university. Or, this is the problem we're trying to solve. And I was really honest with things that worked or didn't work. And what it did was allow me to kind of capture those people that had this initial interest in all this Google Press and just kind of keep like the heart beating on them until like I was actually ready to give them something down the road. So one of the ones that was really, really popular was the update, and we posted on our website. Most people read it through the newsletter. But I called it Joysticks Suck. And it was actually trying to get a joystick that worked for this. So we started, the one on the left is like your standard video game PlayStation joystick. And it's like, it's cheap, it's easy, you can source it anywhere. Like, that's our solution. But by the time you built like a sip and puff switch and a saliva guard, it took a wide range of motion for someone to use. And we went to user testing. One of the people that had like a high level neck injury actually passed out from the pain caused. Like, that is not going to work at all. So we tried these different sort of prototypes and trying to like offset the throw on it or spring-based systems. And it took us a good the while to the one to the right. So that became like a series of like 4 blog posts for me. It's not like my project is failing. Here are the lessons we are learning and trying as we went along. So when it came time to write this, final report or for like the first, technical development part to Google, it wasn't like, oh man, how do I explain that like I've hired engineers who had problems? It's just like, take this little newsletter piece and copy and paste little chunks of it over. So this big report that seemed like daunting and overwhelming, it's like, just kind of went through these newsletters and pulled little pictures here and pieces there, and actually broke it down and made it really easy. Then as the project sort of progressed and we started doing these events where I'm bringing, it's similar to a room like this, people come in, I give them a soldering iron, wiring snips and the kit, and they build it. They make it, we take pictures, we go up on social media, but we did a good job of like, let's curate these things in an area, put out the weekly newsletter, and then you get like these short little testimonials, which look great in reports, right? Here's a kid that's never soldered before, like had a good day at school and stuff. Similarly, we had this sort of group events where people come together, right? So at the end, it's like, oh, we had this event or whatever, but kind of pulling the pieces together. So like I'm way shorter than Maya. But the things that like sort of work for me in terms of doing these big awful reports that I hate was being really rigorous, having sort of a weekly sort of update. It's also like very open and transparent with people about what we're doing. And that became the content for these bigger reports that I needed to do. It was kind of broken up into chunks and pieces. And that really like the work that your comms people are doing, like with here's our success stories or pieces, what I started to give them was like, here are, I didn't tell them this, but like, here are things I have to answer in my report. So like, you know what I'd like a story on? I'd like a story on a small business that hires somebody, but from the small business piece. And then when we're going out doing these presentations, a report to like the small business councils, give them some money, it's like I have that story there. So I basically give the communications team my reporting responsibilities, and they do all the hard work for me, pass it along. And then the other key part was, and Mike kind of touched on this, but I was more blatant with this, like I blatantly shared my mistakes and problems we had in development. And that was easier for me because of the maker sort of engineering sort of project, but I said like, we're having problems, we're having difficulties. And I would sometimes have people that would like get the newsletter right back as like, well, have you tried the, the HUSA board or the 32U64 protocol? And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but let me connect you to the engineers along the way. So in me sharing my difficulties, people shared solutions and helped me sort of solve that along the way. And it wasn't because I saved this annual report. I was just very open and transparent on my failings and trials and tribulations I went through, which actually helped me get to my sort of outcomes. That's it. I'm short and sweet. Do your work along the year. It makes your life easier at the end. Cheers.
Sure. Well, hi there. My name's Eli. I guess I'm back again. So I have a pretty ridiculous job. And that job is basically to support a global network of groups just like this. So there are actually 105 groups in 34 countries, all led by local groups of volunteers coming together and doing this kind of Tech for Good gathering. And I do that on behalf of TechSoup, which is a USA-based nonprofit, although of course many of you have run into the TechSoup Canada. And so I've got all these events happening in places I've never been, hosted by people I've never seen, and I'm a project of one reporting out to this 200-person nonprofit, and I'm the only person working on this project, and I'm remote. So I see them once a year. So it is challenging for me to make my work not invisible within the organization. And so I'm desperately looking for ways to like basically show off and show all the great stuff that are happening at events like this one. And so recently I said like, okay, I've been sending out these reports and nobody is reading them. And I know that because I sent out an all-staff email to about 250 people and I get nothing. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting the sign. So then I started saying about 6 months ago, like, let me start moving into slide decks. And so now I'm just saying, like, let me send out some slides, just a couple pictures, a couple, like 4 bullet points, nothing too scary. And going through this approach, okay, this reporting approach was getting a couple replies. I was getting 1 or 2 people replying back saying, very interesting, or could you tell me more about this event over in Istanbul? We've got a partner there. But still, it's pretty invisible. So, I've been talking about video here at these meetups for about 4 or 5 years now, and I finally said, like, okay, I don't know how to do video. I have no skills, but let me see what I can fake. And so what I've faked is using a product called Adobe Spark. It's totally free, and all it really does is it makes unskilled people look like they have the smallest amount of skill. So professional videographers should not be intimidated by this. We're not going to take away your job, but it does allow people who are just faking it to come in, and basically what it allows you to do is basically take a slideshow, easily narrate it, and then turn it into something that you could actually show to the rest of the world. So here I'll say, basically I took that slide deck you guys just saw and I turned it into a video. And here, I'll fire up that video for you. Did that work? Maybe it didn't, who knows? Anyways, so let me go and bring the little video here. So what I really did is here, I've already hacked at it, but basically I created a little video and it basically sounds a little bit like this.
We're doing another test. The community continues to grow at a furious rate with more than 52,000 members and 138 groups. The majority of groups are still based in the USA, but the future of the network is international. When we look at the top 10 events for the quarter, we see that 4 of them are in the UK and Ireland, reflecting people's concern about the new data privacy rules. In the last quarter, we reached a bit of a milestone, passing 50,000 members. I, of course, could not be more excited. I took advantage of a holiday to Europe and helped launch the new NetSquared Amsterdam group. I also gathered 8 NetSquared UK organizers for a training. But usually I sit at my kitchen in Vancouver and help build the NetSquared community. As you can see, it takes a lot of interviews to get to a successful group launch. But the rigor of putting volunteers through a sales funnel has really paid off with a huge increase in the launch of new groups each year. The investment in the NetSquared community has resulted in very rapid year-over-year growth. But as much as I want to personally take credit for the success of NetSquared, it's really the teams of local volunteers who make it happen.
That's basically the Chads and the Stephanies of the world. So it was 90 seconds. It was not amazing, but it took what I'd already produced, which was a slide deck, and basically allowed me to just import it into the tool. And then I just, within my computer, which is why the sound isn't that great, basically I hit a button and recorded over the slide, and then the slide would then go as long or as short as it needed to. And when I stopped talking, it would move automatically to the next slide. It threw the audio in the background. So it did all of those things without me having to make any decisions, because anytime I have to make an artistic decision, it will end up badly. So basically I want to pull myself out of any artistic decisions. So all it really looks like here is you say like, okay, here's my slide. I'm like, so you can basically say like, here's the thing I recorded. And I'm like, sounded a little bit like this.
But the rigor of putting...
And I'm like, that's great, but actually, let me try and re-record that. look how sexy this slide is. It's going up, up, up. And of course, I'm recording something else, so I can't record this. But basically, I did that. I yelled into my computer, and then at the end, I hit play, and I got a new version of it. And I just got to like re-record my lines 6 or 7 times for each one of like my 10-second little blurbs per line. And then at the end of that, I just went and clicked download. And it gave me a little PDF, and it wasn't amazing, but you know, when I sent that out to all the staff, suddenly I got, 22 replies from people, which meant for the first time ever, I got people's attention for just a little moment, which means they didn't forget that I existed over in my kitchen in Vancouver. So that to me was a bit of like just not an annual report, but just like a quick quarterly report update in a way that I could get in people's attention. If you want to remove all the, the watermarks and all that stuff, you can spend $10. Adobe will happily take your money and give you a bit more options, allow you to put your own logo there. But that was my quick, dirty experiment in taking the slide deck that already existed and yelling into my computer for a little while to try and give a little bit of context to it. And 90 seconds, people paid attention, is a small victory for me.
Thanks, Eli.
Now we're going to switch themes a little bit and talk about data. So we've got Andrea coming up next.
Yeah. All right. Financial data, PDF, beautiful fonts. Great, and view.
Actually, if you leave it like that, that'll.
Yeah. Whatever you are in charge. You know how to run computers.
I don't use Macs. I don't know if I'm going to remember which slide's coming. I'll do full screen for now, and then if I need the crutch, I'll sort of jump out.
So who are you, nice lady?
I'm that. So my name is Andrea Robertson. I come from a science communications / nonprofit background, and in 2016, I left my job at a local nonprofit and struck out on my own and created my own business doing a bit of graphic design, a bit of data analysis, and data visualization for nonprofits, mostly in the Vancouver area. It's called Hypsopops. It's a California state marine fish, the Latin name, obviously. Anyway, I'm here today to talk about presenting financial data and different ways that you can do that. I'm going to do that in a couple of segments here. First up is tables, tidier tables. Tables are a pretty standard way of showing financial data, including in annual reports. You've probably seen those. You flip to the back, and there's all the numbers. I don't know if it's actually legally required for you to have all the numbers, but it's generally good anyway for transparency's sake. And yeah, tables are perfectly fine. To make nice, tidy tables, there's a few things you can do. So this is zooming in on one section of all the tables from the previous slide. And there's a few things going on here. So first of all, we have all of the text aligned to the left. Well, for you guys, to the left. In English in North America, we read text left to right. So you want to have all the starting points all lined up. So that means shove them over to the left. Numbers, on the other hand, we actually kind of read right to left, believe it or not. I mean, yeah, you read it left to right, but when you're reading a number, especially a nice column of numbers, you kind of scan it and see, okay, how many commas, how many digits are there, how big is this number going to be before you get to the left to right part. So for that reason, you do want to right align your numbers. It makes it easier to scan down the list and quickly say, oh, big number, small number, big number, if that's what you're looking for. And that also applies to things like dates and other stuff that has some sort of uniform format to it. If it's something that you think people want to scan, make it easy for them to do so. Another thing that's going on is there's a bit of an unusual spacing thing. So normally, when you make a table of information in your Microsoft software of choice, you get this big grid of information, and every line has its own line that you can follow across with your eyes, but that's also kind of cluttered, makes it a little harder to read. So another option is to remove those grid lines altogether, and instead, to help people follow things across horizontally, put these gaps at regular intervals between lines. So make this white space work for you. If I remove the orange lines, you can see it's a little bit subtle, so someone's not going to be reading the report and be like, oh my God, there's lines missing. But there's going to be enough of a gap that you can say, all right, I'm looking at the second one above the second gap, insurance goes across. So just a subtle thing to help your reader stick with you. Now, there is a temptation to look at that big array of numbers and be like, all right, we're going to make pictures. I fall for it all the time because, it's my job, so I get money when I do that. But just because you can graph something doesn't mean you should. Every graph, every data visualization, everything that you do should have a reason behind it. Graphs in particular, because if you do have your page of financial data, the table of numbers, and then you decide to put in a couple of graphs, you know your reader's going to skip the table and go to the graphs first because they're more interesting. So make sure the graphs are helping you tell a story. Yes, table of numbers. Oh, yeah. See, this is what I meant about forgetting slides. So, table of numbers. Ooh, let's put in a graph. This is a type of graph called a row chart. And this is an example of what it would look like if you did just kind of convert table of numbers into endless graph. You'd have a graph, and it's a perfectly readable graph, and you can, scan and look for the big numbers, small numbers, negatives. But it doesn't tell your reader anything. It just shows them that you can make a graph. Same with these area graphs. They're cool, they're informative, but they're not actually saying anything to your reader. So let's walk through making a graph that's a bit more of a story. So I like to break it down into 3 different parts. So first up, choose your message. What are you trying to say in each and every graph? Every time you make a graph, you should go through these. So what are you trying to say? Then choose your emphasis. What about it are you saying? What exactly are you highlighting? Is it a comparison? Is it, some kind of change? Is it a percentage or proportion? And then you can choose your graph once you know exactly what about the thing you're trying to show. So, step 1, choose your message. I made up a bit of data, and my imaginary charity would like to say that donations have steadily increased since 2010. That's wonderful. So, choose your emphasis. I want to emphasize kind of the second portion of that sentence. So, it's steadily increased. That's a good sign. I want to highlight that. And since 2010. So, I know that there's going to be a longer string of data there. Hey, that's what I just said. So when I'm choosing my graph, I want to make sure that whatever graph it is, whatever graph type, can show those things, that it's a trend over time, and that it has multiple years of data from 2010 to, this would be 2017 annual report. So the simplest option, first, so I'm going to put the message on here as a caption for my eventual graph. I've fleshed it out a little bit more, something a little more audience friendly. Thanks to your support, donations have steadily increased since 2010. And the simplest option would be a line graph. Get that mouse out of there. A line graph. It's pretty simple. It shows trend over time. You can put those years in there. But your basic line graph that comes out of Excel is going to start out looking something like this. It gets the job done, but it's kind of boring. So let's clean it up a little bit. So first thing, remove those cluttery horizontal lines there, those guidelines. Just that one removal alone makes it a lot clearer and a lot easier to read. But let's go ahead and go fully au naturel. remove the axes as well, so we just have our line of data. Now that's sort of going a little too far the other direction. We don't have quite enough information, so let's just put the essentials in. We have our starting point and our ending point, and not much in between. This is something called a spark line. And I chose the spark line because it does exactly what I want it to. It highlights the starting point, it highlights the ending point, and the reader can still see what happened in between, but they're not going to get caught up in the specifics of the numbers. I don't want them to focus on that, so they don't get a note. Instead, they see that $37,000 in 2010 bumped up to $121,000 in 2017. That's great, and it illustrates the message that I'm showing. Now, if you're making an annual report, you can go one step further and really, tug at the old heartstrings and connect it to your charity in particular. Oh, yeah. So these are really flexible. You can put that line on a graph and show your data and your message, and it becomes a lot friendlier than that table of numbers. So be a bit creative with it, and hope that your charity has puppies. Another option is sort of a hybrid between the two. A little bit of design, but really still staying with your numbers. If there's a specific number that you want to highlight, feel free to do so. Just make it nice and big and designy, but go ahead and put the number out there. You could attempt to illustrate those 432 donors somehow by putting like a bunch of little people, or I don't know, a bar, or something. But it's not really necessary. What you're going for here is the bare minimum that effectively gets your message across to your reader. So if your readers are reasonably comfortable with numbers, there's nothing wrong with putting a number up there. And it gets back to the table thing. And I went through my slideshow faster than I thought. I do have a bunch of resources here, and I assume the slides are going to be sent out around, so I won't necessarily go through all of them. But all of these resources are either free or very nearly free, or stuff that you probably already have, like Microsoft stuff. A couple that I'll point out, along the lines of the Noun project. Flat icon is also a good one. my preference, but they're both great resources, both free. Also, in the lines of, actually isn't in my slides here, but I will make sure that they are when I send them out. For free, copyright-free pictures like Unsplash and the others, there's a service called ODAN. It's o-dan.net or something, and it searches like 20 of those copyright-free sites all at the same time, including Unsplash. So sort of a one-stop shop. Yeah, so there's a bunch of tools out there, free and cheap, that allow you to do data visualizations. All the stuff that I did today was strictly with Excel, and I guess there's a little bit of Illustrator that I used in some of the earlier graphs, but the one with the puppy was exclusively Excel and PowerPoint, so you don't need big fancy software to get a good result. And one final thing, if you do use Illustrator or any of the other Adobe design products, one of my favorite workflows or techniques is to do most of the graphing in Excel. Get the nuts and bolts, like 80% of your graph done there. And then go ahead and copy paste into Illustrator, and it actually copies over perfectly well as a vector image that you can then take apart and just use the pieces that you want. It's fantastic. It's my favorite trick. But yes, there's a whole bunch of tools. There's 3 pages of tools in here. You were talking about, there was supposed to be a presenter who was going to do online. Yeah, there's a couple of tools up there, interactive maps and interactive timelines, that can be used. Excuse me. It can be used in online annual reports that are totally free and require minimum technical expertise. And there's that. That's me.
Danny. Yeah.
Great. And you're from Ankle Back Office.
I am, yes.
Terrific. Are you all loaded up on here as well?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Somewhere it was a PowerPoint, as I recall.
Yeah.
Looked a lot like that, and I'm gonna click the play button. Yes?
No. Oh, not that one.
This is all wrong. Oh, this is, you're right.
That's a good looking one though.
It's very mysterious. I don't know how slides work.
There we go.
Ah, even better.
There we
See? Love it. Take it away. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Eli, thank you, Stephanie. So I work with a company called Ankle, which is a bookkeeping service here in Vancouver. I was lucky enough to meet Eli at the Capacity Conference last week, which was a really good organization put on a large conference. So I guess maybe I'll start off. Who here enjoys bookkeeping? You have one person. That's about right. Who struggles with it in their organization? What is it kind of like the worst than ever? Kind of, a little bit. Categorizing. Yeah. Yeah. So with the Societies Act, the BC Societies Act coming up soon, a lot of donors, a lot of government subsidiaries, when they give a donation, they require funding to be tracked. So you have to ensure where that information goes and how it's catered. So one of my jobs with Ankle is to work with not-for-profits and really devise a solution to help with the financial reporting aspect. And this is a perfect time to start because, as you know, it may be a little bit too late for you guys now for this year, but if you start, it will be really easy for next year.
So my name is Danny. Oh no, it's over.
So my name is Danny. As I mentioned, I'm a marketing manager, so I'm not an actual accountant, but I leave that to my staff, the people I work with. So I'm lucky enough to work with some really interesting people. A lot of them were KPMG expats, and they worked with larger not-for-profits on the audit scale and making sure that all the information is accurate and correct. And as I mentioned, Ankle, our company, it means simple in Swedish, and we're all about offering a very simple service and trying to make sure that you have the information that you need in order to be successful, in order to focus on what matters most. So I don't have a very long presentation today. I know it's not the most exciting and it's a late night. What I wanted to do today was go through a few really cool tools that we work with. I think that's kind of the thing, is using tools to make your organization as streamlined as possible, save you time, save you money in the long run, and again, just make things simple. So every organization, whether it's a not-for-profit or a for-profit organization, we generally have 3 to 4 tools that we give right away. So the first one here is Gila, which is a donor relation tool and a CRM management, so a customer relationship management tool. It's based in Vancouver, a really awesome team, and everything you can imagine is really in there. So you can track donations come in, it takes care of the receipts, gives the receipts to the donors, make sure that that's all compliant. There's a CRM tool so you can run reports saying which people have donated, how often they're donating, anything you can do to reach out to them, whether it's an email campaign, whether it's just their contact information, it's all hosted within Gila. And the really cool thing is it syncs with QuickBooks Online, which is a real good backbone for your account. Similarly, Receipt Bank is very good for expense tracking. So Receipt Bank, and there's also a Vancouver-based company called Ledger Docs, which makes it really simple to take photos of any expenses you have. You snap a photo, put a note in saying that this was for whatever payment, whether it's taking somebody out for dinner, whether it's a marketing expense, whatever that is. And you take a photo, you send it to your bookkeeper, you send it just to have it later on down the road. And it's all there with notes included, all of the documentation, so the source documents are there for you to post to your accountant application, and you just ensure that nothing goes missing. Another really cool tool, and I think Eli, you met them, was Pluto. So Pluto is an account payable and account receivable tool. Again, integrates with QuickBooks Online. And this is a really amazing tool for those of you that have dual check authorities or sign-on authorities, which I assume majority of you would, right? So does anybody have to courier checks back and forth?
Yes. Worst.
No worst.
So expensive.
So, exactly. So Pluto is an amazing tool if you have all of your payments in QuickBooks Online. There's a couple of tools similar to QuickBooks Online, but for me, that's one of my favorites. And you have your account payable report, so all the payables that need to be paid. You export it to Pluto. Pluto has which ones you want to pay, and it sends the information to the sign authorities. So they just say yes on their email, at their phone or their computer, and it makes payment on behalf of the company.
On their phones.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? So it saves so much time back and forth, whether it's the board member is away on vacation and they're back 2 weeks from now, whether they're just too busy to get the curve, all of that's right there for you. It's all automated and all very simple and relatively cheap. And lastly, so all of these are paid tools too, I should note, but they are amazing tools, and they're definitely, I think personally, really, for what you get with them, very well funded. Lastly, QuickBooks Online. So this is kind of the backbone, if you will, of your accounting system. So QuickBooks Online is a cloud-based tool. You can log in. All of your information is there. And the really big benefit, and why I guess I'm speaking today, if you will, is for your financial reporting. You export it, you give it to you. All that information is right there, and it already looks pretty good, but you can play around with whatever you need in there. And that way, at the end of the year, when you're doing your annual reports, all that information is there. You're not running around trying to get caught up in this last-minute bookkeeping, right? So those are the tools that we give to all of our clients when they come in. And the main thing for us is understanding your information. So trying to make it as simple as possible. When you run that report, how does it look? How do you understand it? And really one of the big things too is the reporting system. I mean, working with not-for-profits, bookkeeping and accounting is difficult. It's difficult to understand if you don't have that background. And we found that a lot of board members, a lot of stakeholders, they look at a financial statement and it means absolutely nothing to them. So what we've worked on the past 2 months is actually a reporting module itself, which goes into a little bit more detail, maybe more specifically for larger organizations, but goes into more detail in exactly what you need to see and what you want your board of directors to see or what you want your donors to see. And it makes it a little bit more visual where you can see it in 1 second, you can understand exactly what's happening. So these reports are something that we offer to some of our larger organization clients, and it's very customized depending on the needs of you, the needs of your organization, and the needs of your stakeholders. So that's the main points that I wanted to cover today. I hope that was helpful. And I think along the lines of, the entirety of today is using tools, using technology to save you time. You have a dream, you have a hope, you're running your organization, but if you're spending time doing data entry and these mundane tasks, then you're not really helping anybody, right? Unfortunately, bookkeeping and accounting is a necessity and is always going to be there. So if you can use some of these tools to help streamline that process and make sure that you spend as little time as possible, then you're doing a good job. So I hope that helps and you find it interesting, and I guess we'll move on to the questions from the rest of the group.
Great, thank you.
Why don't all the speakers come up to the front and do sort of like a brain trust thing?
All right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure on all the people who can ask questions. Yeah, let me
Step straight into the blind.
let's see if there's a.
Oh, wow.
Fancy, like,
Isn't that it? questions.
Oh my goodness. What are some hot tips for finding stories? Like, what are the places you go to again and again and again finding stories you can share with your audiences?
This is for me.
Yes.
So one of the things I do, like Chad was saying kind of, is I email every single person in my organization to ask them about what the most memorable moment to 3 moments of the year were for them. That means that they're doing the work for me, plus they're there on the ground in the communities, like a lot of the people who work with our members, and I'm not. I'm definitely in the head office, so I get some of those stories, but that's kind of my easiest one, I think, because it covers everything for me. It covers like the whole province. And then I'm always looking for stories at events. So I look at people's interactions. I totally like creepily spy at people and see what they're doing. I also, on Facebook, because we have quite a big social media following, I look at the conversations between people, and I definitely dig through those. I mine quotes, and I mine kind of things that are happening. So feelings, if someone's feeling happy about something or frustrated about something, and maybe we can solve that problem and then turn it into a story. It's really good, I think, to get in at the beginning of when you're solving a problem too, because then you're actually there documenting the entire story. So if you see something that can be solved, then get in there, I guess. I also have one.
Yeah.
I used to be the communications department for a nonprofit, and newsletters were my starting point in many cases, because as much as your newsletter recipients love you, most of them have not read your newsletters. So you can use the same stories. You may want to change the wording just so it's not blatantly obvious, but yeah, if it was prominent enough to go out in your monthly newsletter, however frequently, then yeah, it can go in your year in review.
So I have an annual survey that goes out to my 50,000 Net Squared members. And one of my questions every year is like, how did we help you this year? And of course, 90% of people leave that field totally blank. But every year I'm sourcing really fascinating stories, which then I basically just say cut and paste, go back to that person and say like, hey, do I have your approval? Can you give me a nice photo of you or some of the work you're doing? And then I just slap that little quote on a photo, boom, report.
Nice. I've also had luck going back through my Outlook calendar and what are the things I had meetings about the past year that I had to communicate about, and sometimes there's stories there. Random.
Can I add something as well?
Yeah,
to myself?
please do.
If we have a great event or something that went fabulously well, if I have the time for it, which I always wish I did, and I feel like I would save myself a lot of time in the future, I would pick up the phone and call the participants and just record, like all your phones have a recording device on it, have a super quick chat, record the conversation, and then you've got a story basically that's built. So tell them you're recording.
Okay. Waiting for that line. Any questions from the audience? Great. Michelle? Yeah.
If there's any, what other uses for annual reports in terms of, grants or applying for things, and are there any, actual regulatory requirements for reports that you want?
We send them to grantors all the time. I probably get an email once every week and a half from the person that does grants in our office asking me where the annual report is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say we use them for reporting. As for regulatory things,
I think if you're a registered charity, you're required to publish your financial statement. I'm not an expert on this. Yeah. I work for a grant maker, so we're required by legislation to publish an annual report. That's specific legislation for us.
Yeah, I think when it's something that is pretty and beautiful and well designed, then it becomes part of your marketing, whether it's out to donors or meaning something you guys show and kind of tells a story, right? When it's many pages of text, it's a little harder to do that, right? So I really like mine. It's highly visual. It almost looks like an infographic, but an interactive piece, right? It becomes a weapon and engagement to sort of bring people in as opposed to paperweight.
the other thing is is recycling. So if I pull apart my annual report, like say I have this beautiful graph in it, I'll just screenshot that or save that one bit, and suddenly it's like a Twitter post or a Facebook post, and it's just that one piece of information. And in your annual report, you have like 100 of those, so you're set for like X amount of days.
Yeah. Produced a lot of different work this year. I was wondering before we go. So your experience when you have posted on PDF to your website, not PDF to your website where people exist for people read them?
I like spend so much time doing them, and I'm really happy with how they turn out, so I make sure people read them. Like I fully, for our events, I print the postcards. I like send out an email that's like an invite through paperless post to view our annual report. You're invited. And then I like approach every single person and I'm like, did you see this? And yes, I would say that whether by wanting to or by fear, they do end up reading it. And yeah, when we basically like take every opportunity to send them out. I'll squeeze it into our newsletters for our members. Like I'll put it on the slider of our website. Like everywhere I can put it, I put it. But that's because also like probably like you, I know it's good work and that people are going to enjoy it, and they just think they're not.
One of the advantages of going online with an annual report as well is you can track what people click on, so you can see what they're interested in. You can use that information to help shape the future.
You can track your thing.
Yeah, that as well. But you won't be able to tell you what they did with it.
I actually probably I did send it out through paperless post last year, which I don't know if you guys use that, but it's a paper. It's a. Do you know?
No.
We use it all the time. So it's an invite, an e-invite platform, but you can send out like invites to events or like invites to click this PDF or things like that. It tracks it also the same way as any email thing does. And it allows people to reply back to you. So I sent out the annual report and I got actually quite a few replies, and this was to members. So it's not who we're expecting to be reading them, but a lot of nice comments being like, great job, this totally captures what we did. Some comments that are like, where are the photos of me? But yeah, I think like the feedback on it was really rewarding to see that people were reading it.
What software did you use for your online annual report?
WordPress. It's a WordPress website. Yeah.
And did you spend 7 years of dedicated work to make that happen?
did.
Because I suspected as much.
No, I basically like locked myself up for 2 weeks and worked solely on this project, but that's because it was like it had 26 letters of the alphabet, that one. There's ways to make it super simple, and yeah, like there's a lot of free online like WordPress tools or other web design tools now that you can easily make work for you, I think. And maybe someone has a better suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of any tools I've come across that are coding free or super, super light coding. And I don't know of any, but at the end of my presentation when I had those resources, the timeline one and the other one, the map one, those are sort of like a tiny snippet of what something like yours would look like. So if you imagine a web page on your website, whatever your websites look like, you could put in a plugin in one of those tools. So plug in a timeline, for example, an interactive timeline. You don't have to code something new and fancy. You just kind of plug it in, just like you're sharing a YouTube video. And then you could have text underneath and download our PDF report. So you're sort of almost like a hybrid approach. So you're spicing things up with a little interactivity, but you don't have to lock yourself away for 2 weeks.
Totally. I think also, sorry, the template we use for that one, I think, is the Divi template, which is a paid one, but it's quite user-friendly. Like, it does work in the way that Wix or Squarespace do, where it's very visual. You can drag and drop, and depending on how it's not like you're writing code in the back end anymore. So.
For hard copies, can you suggest free templates or low-cost templates?
You mentioned that Canva.com. That's a great resource. You can do infographics. I made a magazine one time, and it's completely free.
Canva's a good option. Crello, Crello, is also one that I like. Yeah, they can be a little hit and miss, and there's certainly advantages and disadvantages to using those just because of the output that they provide. Yeah, let's see. There's also, if you're willing to learn a little bit of a new software, there are free alternatives to Adobe products that exist out there. They do have a bit of a learning curve, but you know, can do more powerful, more outside the template type things with them.
Eli, if you're a registered nonprofit and you want to get Adobe Suite software, where can you go?
I encourage people to spend as little money as they should, but sometimes you need particular tools. Perhaps QuickBooks is the right thing because you're not going to train up your finance team on a brand new tool. Perhaps you've got someone who really has all the skills already in Adobe. Yeah, you go to TechSoup Canada, create a free account if you're a nonprofit charity or church or library. And from there, you're usually going to find discounts on software, everything from totally free for like the Google Suite services, down to I think you're getting about, I don't even know what the discount is, but get a discount on QuickBooks, and I believe it's more like a 30% discount these days with the Adobe Creative Suite, maybe 40, something in there. So if you're spending full price for those pieces of software, you shouldn't because we want to save you money.
My question is basically, how do you manage resources, especially time, for creating annual reports? I work for a small nonprofit, 3 full-timers, 8 part-timers. We could definitely benefit from better reporting, but most of the staff are super overextended. So how would you make quality reporting happen in that kind of environment?
I mean, my trick was to capture it as it happens, because you think you're going to remember, you're not going to remember. I mean, sometimes I look back at the calendar and like, what did I do? Oh yeah, I was there. I totally forgot about that, right?
Yeah. Are you looking for numbers or stories specifically in this case?
Everything. we are just concentrating on surviving day to day, but one of our primary goals is definitely to seek more donors, and we keep bumping up against the same wall, which is we need data, we need statistics, we need colorful photos, we need stories, but no one person is doing that. Everyone has their job to do something else. So either someone steps up, or you take it piecemeal, or maybe you have some suggestions.
So when I was grabbing, like, we've done like, I think 75 of these newsletters now with this project. It's got like 1,000 subscribers. They're all like these personal stories from Chad. Chad's written maybe about 4 of them. What I did was I've been able to access summer jobs funding, which is open right now, and then other youth sort of skilled internship stuff. And then I go to the local universities and I find the kids that are working for their, their peak newspaper or whatever the UBC student paper is, and I steal one of their editors, give them a summer job. I usually top up their wage a little bit so I get the better one. And then I just basically sit down and like, come sit with me for 10 minutes. I'm gonna like brain dump the stuff on you. I'm gonna get this guy's name and phone number. Let me see it for you. Put send. So they get these nice little like well-written stories from someone whose job that is. Most of their wage is covered through government dollars. And like they're a writer, and for them they're like, they're getting some real world experience and stuff. The problem with that model is they end up getting really good at it and they go get better jobs down the road. But there's like, the next 2nd or 3rd year sports editor for your local university paper. But don't take them because he's my next hire. But that's been my project, is lots of sort of, government, Trudeau is also the Minister of Youth, there's also youth skilled work sort of internship stuff, which might not cover all the salary, but a big chunk of it. And they take a lot of that work off my plate. So it's not me worrying about, I got this thing. I just tell Priyanka, like, this is the event we did, this is the person I want you to talk to, here's their phone number, let me see it before you click send.
I usually try to stack everything on the same day because I'm the same as you. Like my department was me, until I got someone else. But so yeah, I know that we have 2 big events where things like look beautiful, the lighting is great, it's outdoors and it's in the summer. And I will try to get everything I need for this report. So our annual report comes out in October, which means the summer months are when I'm working towards it at last minute. And yeah, so I line up, like I shoot video, I shoot photos, I record quotes or pull them from videos. And usually I find that like one day of really focusing on that gets me everything I would need for the year. Like I don't even end up using all of it. And if I find like a great photo from that day, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. You can just shoot them a quick email and be like, hey, can you tell me how doing this made you feel? Or like something like that. A leading question that gives you the answer you need.
Yeah, I'm in favor of leading questions.
I also was in a very similar situation where communications was just like a small fraction of my job, and then everyone else on the team and I did a bunch of other things. So it was sort of a semi-afterthought. So in those cases, I would ask my colleagues for, I need 2 or 3 stats from each of you, and you can either write me a paragraph, or we can sit down for 5 to 10 minutes, and you can just like tell me about what this project looked like this year. And then I would write a draft, and because I'm slightly manipulative, I would write it wrong. I would intentionally put an error in the first sentence, because they would open their email, they'd read it and be like, oh, this is incorrect. And people, it's easier to it's easier to edit something that's already written, first of all, rather than originating material. So they would see something that they only need to edit, and something is about to go to print. Big mistake. So they would immediately revise it and send it back to me.
I think accountability though is really key, and also kind of managing as you go along. But I know it's a tough conversation, especially when everybody's busy. But when you sit down and you know that a bunch of things need to happen, if you sit down and make somebody accountable for that action, it does really force everybody to work together. Right?
So speaking of accountability, I'm kind of curious about, you've been introducing these dashboards into these organizations. What's the feedback from that now that people get more real-time information as opposed to getting something at the end of the year as like, say, a board member?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one of the big things that we found is, again, having all that information right in front of you, you can understand better how that money is going, whether it's, okay, we need to get more money, or we need to start spending this money more efficiently, or there's a big event happening over here, but we don't have funds for that. So you can really, push the initiatives more, and you have basically a better understanding of what you need to do in order to be successful.
So we put a bit of a fire underneath your board members to get out there and start making some introductions.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last call for questions. Oh, one last one. Okay.
So mine.
Okay. Michelle and I work together.
So you want to do an online annual report. You know it's going to take a while, and you know this is something you definitely want to do. How do you convince your executive director that this is something that is absolutely essential?
Speaking of leading questions.
Oh, wow. That's true, actually. People don't want to put resources towards the online one, for sure. But we did it 3 years, and the first year was a real struggle to convince our director that we needed it. I had pulled all kinds of fancy online annual reports from for-profit organizations, so like MailChimp was a great one that I love, and I was like, we could do this, it would tell our stories so well. And in the end, I don't know if there's a way, you convince by doing it. Because what I did the first year was I put in overtime hours and just did it. And then once he saw how great it was, he's like, okay, we'll do that in the years to come. I guess I would say is the answer.
I guess just the difference between doing a text-heavy document and then making it look beautiful.
Yes, I think that's correct, Michelle. Yeah, totally, you're right. Like that's where all our beautiful photos from the year get to live, is online. Not so much, well, in the print one too, but really so many of them get to live online.
One more question.
I would expect that an advantage of doing that is most of the once you have your base template for it, and then it's going to be easier going forward. If you're buying it again, you may update the style a little bit, and it's obviously update once that stuff
All right.
Sure. Well, thank you all so much for this, and thank you, Stephanie, for organizing. All right, so I told you that you guys are going to have a chance to show off, and this is going to be that moment. So if you've got something you want to share, if you're super proud about something you've just launched, you just want to tell people about it, this is your moment. Following that, we're all going to go head out to a pub, first round of drinks on our friends IX Payments, who is our sponsor. And so don't rush away because we want to go out and have some drinks together. The person taking you to Drinkland today is going to be Stephanie? Yeah. So follow that lady. She'll be leaving about 5 minutes after the close. And then a couple more of us will just stay here to do the final cleanup and rush over. So we're into show and tell mode. Let me model that. So here's the thing I want to show and tell. Hi there, my name's Eli. I'm one of the organizers of Next Square Vancouver. And the thing I'm most proud about recently is that this group of volunteers has a larger conference. So we do this fancy thing every year, every month, but we also bring in an event which is much more focused at things your boss should know about digital strategy, like how to hire digitally savvy staff for your nonprofit. You know, how do you actually tie all the pieces of your campaigns into a big integrated piece as opposed to working in silos? So we do an annual one-day conference. It's going to be over at the Roundhouse on June 11th. It's going to be amazing, and I basically told no one about it except for the people who bought tickets last year, and now you guys. On the 13th, we're going to go live to the public, but because I love you, there is a very limited number, now 17 super early bird cheapo tickets available. So if you want to know more about how to get into this fancy conference, which will be delicious and have 3 food trucks, talk to me or get your ticket now and drag your boss along, because we're going to be much more big picture, and we're going to slap them gently about the face and say, you should pay attention to these things. That's the thing I'm excited about these days. Who else has got fun things on the go? Do you have anything amazing? Blog posts you've written about recently? Online learning that's available to people?
Yeah, that's sort of an awkward question. I'm actually shutting my business down. My husband and I bought a board game store 2 blocks that way.
Nice.
So I'm kind of getting out of the nonprofit design world into the for-profit.
Anyone else have cool things? Go, come on up, come on up.
You guys are close, mostly preparing for me, but we are working on something cool that you may or may not find useful. So our info line gets phone calls from around the province, and one of the phone calls that comes in quite frequently is, what parks and outdoor spaces are accessible? And the answer is, we have no idea. So what we've been doing is assessing parks. We started with Northern BC, and we've assessed more than 500 parks for accessibility features and amenities. This means that literally we've had people through a job creation program go in and measure the slope of paths, or measure the width of doorways, or measure the grab bars and all this stuff. We also have 11 virtual tours, so you can explore some of our best parks straight from home. And let me just give you an example of what this looks like. So it's basically a tourism site with accessibility in mind. We're hoping to branch out to the rest of British Columbia and do all the parks, the rec areas, the rest stops. So let's see here. If you went to Mount Robson, for example, you would find this, and every page looks like this. So the access route, the camping, the goods and services, washrooms, viewing areas, trails, and water access, they've all been rated for accessibility. We give it an overall star rating. Sadly, nothing probably gets better than this, because parks are by nature not accessible. But we're hoping to change that so that at least they're a little bit better universally designed for accessibility purposes. And then you just get a little about this park. If you want to actually download the full accessibility audit, because you're someone who is really particular about your needs, then you can go right ahead and do that. And yeah, we're building it out slowly but surely. There's a lot of data to input, so if anyone wants to volunteer in that, we're always looking for people. But yeah, something cool that we've been working on, and we're launching it actually on Friday. So here's a little pre-launch.
Cool. That looks super fancy. Anyone else come on up? How about anyone looking for a job? Anyone look? Well, like, come on up. You should tell people about that.
Hi everyone, my name's Andrew, and aside from helping Net Squared out with these events, I'm also helping put together something called a LinkedIn Local, which there's been one so far in Vancouver, but it's something that started last year in 2017 and it's sort of rocketed. And the whole idea is about meeting people behind the profile. So it's just about people on LinkedIn coming together and just getting to know each other a bit better. And it's something that started off in a few countries and is now in over 150 cities around the world. And we have our second one in Vancouver, and we're at Science World, which is going to be awesome. So it's a non-profit event always, and if I can remember the URL. Go on, you know you want to work. That's it. So it's on Monday the 19th of February at 6:30 p.m. And then we're going to have a couple of speaking panels. The first one's on the role of failure in entrepreneurship, success. And the second one is on ways blockchain technology will change the world. And then there's going to be a whole networking component to the evening. There'll be a sort of a food buffet and stuff like that. But basically, if you've got nothing to do on a Monday night, it's $10 for an early bird ticket at the moment. That's just to cover the food. So yeah, come down and say hello.
Cool, thank you. Anyone else got something you want to share? Things that they're on the go?
Okay, I'm really shy.
Well, but if you're going to find a job, you got to come up here. Tell us. Introduce yourself. And tell us what the amazing skills you have.
So I recently moved back to Vancouver, and by recently I mean 2.5 weeks ago. So everything's sort of fresh, new, bit of the same old. But I'm a graphic designer. I did my master's at Emily Carr, and for the past 2 years I've been in Karachi, Pakistan, working for an editorial design firm. Basically, I was leading it. And we launched a few weekly magazines, and we were in charge of this monthly magazine that I believe is about 70 years old. So it's a really cool established company. It's one of the biggest English language newspapers in Pakistan. And a bit about what I did there. It's a massive organization of maybe 1,000 people. And most of them were sort of older people. They were guys. I was the youngest female head of department, and it was scary as hell. But what we managed to do there as a team of 7 young designers is reach an audience of over 380,000 people, which I'm glad I found out afterwards, because if I knew the numbers up front, I would have been too freaked out to do anything. But it was still pretty cool. So I'm here. I'm looking for new collaborations and new connections.
So describe your ideal client. Who do you want to work with?
Oh, that's a tough one. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is this sort of intersection between graphic design and social impact. So I don't know exactly what the ideal client looks like, but it's somebody who, you leave the world a little bit better every time you do something with them. So yeah, that's basically. That's
well,
it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And welcome back.
Thank you.
Great. Well then, this is basically the end. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us. We are returning again in, a month. March 6th, we're going to come and we're going to talk a little bit about webinars. Chad, who may or may not be part of this, give him the 30-second.
Yeah, there will be me and Tanya both speaking. It's me assuming I'm in town about how you use webinars to further your mission in two very different ways. Tanya will use it to kind of build a sort of donor base